Top secret JFK assassination files are finally released. Lee Harvey Oswald was in contact with a member of KGB 2 months ago, 2 months before shooting. An anonymous phone calls said Russia was behind it. Trove of 1,500 documents revealed. This is on page 5. Biden said he wanted to do this. They finally did it. More than 1,500 public Okay. They include memos detailing anonymous phone calls from a U.S. embassy in Canberra, Australia, a year before the shooting, where the caller said the Soviet government was plotting to kill Kennedy, and details of Oswald's meeting with a KGB agent at Soviet embassy in Mexico City 2 months before the shooting. Another call was placed on November 24, 2 days before the shooting, claiming the Russians were behind it. Earlier this year, Robert F. Kennedy, JFK's nephew, which I'm about to do a debate with him in the next 2 weeks, with him and somebody that he just wrote a book about Fauci, and it's not the nicest book about Fauci.
It's amazing.
Yeah. You read it already?
I'm part of it. I started it, and a good friend of mine turned me onto it who read it, and he told me all about it. Unbelievable.
Yeah, we're doing it. He's debating somebody over the topic in the next couple
Cheryl
weeks.
Hines' husband, from Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah, okay, cool.
You've talked to RFK before.
Let me finish this time. Let me finish this time. I'm going to go. So JFK's nephew fumed that some of the files would remain secret until next year. How the hell is it 58 years later, and what in the world would justify not releasing these documents, RFK said. By the way, these are not all the files. Some of the files are going to release next year, and some of them we may never find out about. Do you think, Tom, because I know you follow this story, you're somebody that's also curious about this topic. You and I have talked about this many times. Do you think we're going to learn anything new?
No, I don't think so. There was the speculation that that the Russians were involved, that the Cubans were involved, that felt betrayed by the Bay of Pigs, that the Teamsters were involved, that Sam Giancana was involved. And what I find interesting here is they're all pointing back to Oswald, which points back to the single gunman theory, which is the one thing that every scientific analysis of all the echo and everything in the tapes, and Clint Hill, who you spoke to.
Yep.
And the last, I think he's the last living person that was in the first two cars.
So no, you're saying nothing. Is anybody thinking anything new is going to come out? Daniel,
nothing at all.
Okay.
They'll never reveal the stuff that actually tells you what happened. Because somebody has to know.
Do you have a crazy theory on what you think happened? Like 10 seconds. What do you think happened?
Two options. Internally, mafia, because of Dad, Joe, or Russia has to be involved.
What do you think, Danielle?
I'm with my daddy. Was a bootlegger.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. How does a secret like that stay a secret? I mean, I know people that when I go places, people tell me things. I don't know what it is. People just open up. I learn who's sleeping with who.
You're like a priest.
They just feel comfortable telling me things.
Wow.
And
Powerful.
I don't know what it is. So maybe it's my nice guy vibe or something. But how do people keep secrets like this? How does not one person reveal what happened?
Yeah.
How do we not know? How is it even possible? Someone has to know. And it sure as the heck isn't one gunman. There's just no way. It's impossible. Right. I mean, if you go to the JFK, the site and you go to the building, there's just no way. It's impossible.
They play the tape and they show you four echoes.
And then why was it so important to kill him the next day? I mean, this is so fascinating. I wish we could learn.
There's a lot of stuff there. I know I interviewed Jack Barsky 2 weeks ago. His interview came out yesterday. Jack Barsky was a former KGB member from Germany. He got recruited, went to Russia. They trained him. And then he came out. He did espionage. He did everything. So I showed him a video of Yuri Bezmenov. If you've ever seen Yuri Bezmenov's interview before, it's pretty sick, where he's talking about the whole subversion and what they do and how they train and how Russia's trying to take over U.S. by getting their philosophies of Marxism in universities and professors and teachers and get the youth, and eventually, like today's modern day of UC Berkeley, is what they essentially were talking about. And they've been successful. So I asked him all these other things about the KGB. I said, was KGB involved? And I said, no, let me tell you what we did, the KGB. Number one, J. Edgar Hoover was never a cross-dresser. We planted that. I'm like, stop.
Well done.
He says, he was never a cross-dresser. We told him and threatened them that we're going to do that. You know what else? The AIDS scandal, that was us. We made that AIDS scandal in America. We did that. I'm like, dude, I think you're gaslighting me right now. But anyways, no one's going to know. It's a story. It's another great opportunity right now for someone in Hollywood, Steven Spielberg, to make a JFK movie right now.
Sure. It's a good timing. There'd be appetite
Go make another one.
It's been
Change
a while.
the angle. And bring the mob and, maybe tie, Godfather 4 coming out with JFK assassination linked to it. Who knows?
Let me ask you a question. Do you think the immediate Kennedy family knows what happened? Maria, did Jackie know? Is it knowledge that's common, at least
RFK
in some circles?
is known as one of the greatest environmental attorneys America's ever had. Okay, that's what RFK's reputation is, right? In the environmental attorney side, he is the best, right? When he and I spoke the first time I interviewed him, I brought up the whole JFK assassination conversation. This is a guy that explained it in such an eloquent way that to him, he spent his entire lifetime trying to find out what the hell happened. Because it wasn't just his uncle, it was also his father.
Right.
It's emotional to this guy. So I guarantee you they know more than you and I think they know.
I buy that. That I buy.
Yeah, I think they know. I think they know. Maybe we'll bring RFK on a podcast.
You know what's really
here.
interesting about conspiracies in history?
What's that?
Right. So the mob always thinks a conspiracy is bigger and there's more angles to it. But when you take a look at the mafia and the conspiracy of kills around the families, conspiracies only stay quiet long term if there's a small group of people, and then what you always look for is the second kill. And so when you take a look at what happened with Kennedy, if Oswald was one of the gunmen, apparently he was, then you look at the second kill. Well, that was Oswald. And so a small group of people that then offs some of the people that were executing it, that's how the conspiracies work, and that's how they stay secret. So when you look at things long term, if it's a big, giant conspiracy, you know, it always leaks out and the truth kind of comes around. When it's a small conspiracy and you have the second and the third kills, then it stays quiet.
So you're better off not knowing because you might be dead.
Yeah,
No. I mean, like
that's his
Oswald
message.
plus who else? Who was the guy?
There's one guy I don't trust. Here's the one guy I don't trust. The one guy that I always just, no matter what I read, I just don't get a good feel about the guy is Lyndon Johnson. I just don't trust that guy.
Yeah.
Nothing about that guy do I trust. If you read up his legacy, the way he was wired, who he was, he hated Kennedy. When Kennedy called him to be the VP, he's like, who the hell do you think you are? I'm supposed to call you. I'm the candidate. You don't call me and tell me to be the VP. I call you and tell you, do you want to be my VP? I mean, Lyndon, that was his fastest way to being a president.
Easiest route.
He was a pragmatist.
Who knows? I mean, I'm not telling you he did it. All I'm telling you is if he was that motivated to be a president, strategically, he got it done. Okay, and his mistress had some stories to say about it, but
You're
who
right.
knows?
In Catherine Graham's biography, who used to be the publisher of the,
Yeah.
of the Washington Post, she tells all the bloody stories about the behind closed door and Lyndon Johnson and how he and JFK he hated JFK.
Yeah,
And her husband was in the room. So it's just
91 hours after the
fascinating read.
assassination, Lyndon Johnson started the Vietnam War, after the French advisors had screwed up and lit the tinderbox. I mean, you just look at things like that, and it's a nasty, nasty guy.
So here's the one thing I think about. Any president that was ever assassinated or character assassinated typically scare the hell out of the establishment. The establishment likes to pick who becomes the next president. The establishment doesn't like you to pick who becomes the next president. The establishment likes to pick who becomes the next president. As long as it's within the crew of who we are, okay, cool. We're going to be fine because we'll still have our card, we'll still have our parties, we'll still have the country club feeling, all that other stuff. You bring one of these guys that Lincoln out of nowhere comes in, or you get a freaking Reagan who goes from Hollywood and comes in, and you were fighting communists and you want to come in and be the president? What are you talking about? You talking about John F. Kennedy and your father who was Joseph Kennedy? We don't like people like you. Trump, we don't like people like Trump. So, I don't know. I don't know if the establishment likes people like Lincoln, Kennedy, Reagan, or Trump. They're not big fans of them.
Not at all.
This is why we ought to be very grateful to having a person like Biden right now in the White House. Because it's just a
Pat,
very,
you found a positive from him. That's great for Biden.
I've been reading a lot of
Come
Norman
on.
Vincent Peale
Give
lately.
me a break. We've gone from clinically insane to medically dead. Give me a break. Jesus.
Danielle, but you didn't support the alternative.
What alternative?
When the
Are you saying
alternative
that-
happened a year ago, you didn't support the alternative. You have two choices.
Two choices between clinically insane and medically dead?
Yeah, so you.
I'm proud to be an American?
But what I'm saying to you is, even a year ago, who was our options? We had two of them.
Yeah.
You had a Trump and a Biden.
I know you did. And they were both Democrats.
So you see Trump as a Democrat.
A New York Democrat who gave to both of Kamala's campaigns. And they've got Kamala, locked in the basement somewhere. By the way, there is a precedent. We were talking earlier about Biden being replaced.
Yeah.
We forget that Spiro Agnew was replaced during Nixon's term. So there's a precedent for taking your vice president out. Just saying.
Well,
She's
if it's
not-
this bad after
And
1 year.
Spiro Agnew was replaced for the equivalent of a parking ticket nowadays.
Well, true. And then 8 months later, Kennedy was Nixon was out of office.
And then they put Gerald Ford in.
So is it a form of blaming somebody else? It's like shifting blame. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
From everything that I've heard, you can't even put Biden and Harris in the same room together. He actually wakes up and gets angry enough that he's like actually got a pulse.
Huh. That actually could be a good thing, though. No, like that can get him
Maybe
going.
they should put her in the room right
Right
before
next
his
to him.
before his press
Good morning.
conferences.
It keeps him alive.
Hey, Biden.
No, they need to put her in the room right before he goes up to the podium
a
for the
shot of
press conference,
adrenaline.
because it'll be like, whoa.
Now we can do the conspiracy loop. Spiro Agnew gone. Gerald Ford becomes the vice president. Gerald Ford was on the Warren Commission. The Warren Commission investigated the Kennedy assassination. Kennedy cheated in the election
Ford was a
on
badass.
Richard Nixon.
Gerald Ford was a complete badass. I'm going to stand up for Gerald Ford here. He was a military hero. He was a badass football player at Michigan.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 seasons undefeated. Gerald Ford was an amazing.
You screwed up, Tom.
Amazing president.
Okay, you guys went from sisters to now enemies in 30 minutes.
Gerald
okay?
Ford.
Let me change the story.
American.
Let me change the story. Gerald Ford's career at as a running back.
Is he related to
around.
Charles?
No, I'm just messing around right now. So if you enjoyed this little short segment from the podcast that we did, here's another short segment to watch. Or if you want to see the entire podcast, click over here. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.